Hi everyone, welcome back to Adobe Live. If you're new on here, Stephanie and I are just hanging out every day, having a chat to keep you inspired at home, 12 to 1 with the UK creative community. And we want to hear from you really. So how's everyone doing? Happy Wednesday. How are you, Stephanie?
I'm good. How are you, Emma? So many people in the chat already. They're all waiting for us and of course for Ejatu, our guest today.
Absolutely. We're joined today by the super talented Ejatu Shaw, who's a photographer based in London and who'll tell us a little bit more about her journey to shooting with different formats, your work in the fashion industry as well, I heard, and yeah, loads to cover today. So as usual, let us know if you have questions in the chat. We're here to help. But yeah, introduce yourself, Ejatu. We can get started.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me, by the way. So as Emma said, I'm a London-based photographer and I've been doing it for about 4 years now. So I guess I kind of fell into it in a way. I started shooting on my phone and I ended up like really enjoying the whole editing process on like apps. And then eventually I got my first camera and I began shooting architecture and landscapes, and I eventually got into photographing people. And yeah, it's just been a passion of mine that I've managed to make into a job as well. So really enjoy it.
Yeah, and where did you actually study? Did you say you studied architecture? We were just talking about this before. But what brought you to photography and how did you kind of hone these artistic skills that you have today?
So I studied architecture at Edinburgh University, so all the way in
You
Scotland.
did?
Yeah,
I studied in Edinburgh as well.
No way. Oh,
we didn't know this about each other. Okay, was that the ECA or where did you study?
Yeah, so I was there for about 2 years. And basically with architecture, like I didn't enjoy the full thing, but one thing I really took from it was visualizations and like using Photoshop to create really cool things. And then also, I guess whilst I was there, I took up photography as well and like photographing models in the city, and also going to Glasgow sometimes. And I found that like photography was like beginning to do this and architecture was doing that. So I eventually moved back to London. So that was 3 years ago.
Very nice. You pretty much self-taught as well in a lot of what you kind of do today, right? You were, telling me about this last week as well. And, what inspired you to get there, and what did this shift from, studying at the university and just kind of doing your own thing? How did that challenge you and inspire you?
I think part of it was my move back to London, because there's just something about the energy here. It's just very uplifting and it's fast paced. And I just, as soon as I got here, like I found myself like in situations where I just wanted to like keep creating and keep meeting new people. So like when I first got here, I ended up working as an extra in one of Idris Elba's movies.
You did? Oh,
yeah,
brilliant.
So he directed it, and that was like one of the first gigs I had. And then being on set was just super exciting, and seeing how the different jobs there work. And after a while, I found myself like meeting up with people, photographing them and taking portraits. And from there, it just kind of became more of a job.
Yeah, and did you have any mentors when you first moved to London, or was that something that you kind of started on your own and just tried to pull together?
Yeah, definitely. Verona McKenzie is definitely one of them. Also, Christina as well. She's been my mentor for a long time. And I guess just seeing different photographers on Instagram and reaching out to them, asking to assist on shoots and things of that nature. It's definitely helped me in learning.
Nice, awesome. And what do you have in store for us today? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna throw it back a bit and show you some work from 2017 when I first got here. So I'm gonna show you my project Polly that I put out. And then I'm gonna show you my retouching technique as far as Photoshop is concerned. And then I'm gonna talk a bit about film, which is my new passion. So yeah. So
yeah, Stephanie.
Yeah, I have a question. What would you say is the biggest difference between Edinburgh and London in terms of architecture?
Ooh, in terms of architecture, so obviously Edinburgh is a very like traditional, very historical as far as the architecture is concerned, and there's so many amazing castles there as well. So many. As far as London is concerned, obviously it varies, lots of modern architecture and lots of the old stuff as well. But I find that London just has a vibrancy to it that Edinburgh to me personally didn't have, but I would like to go back there soon to just kind of relive everything in a more like open way, as soon as everything is over, of course.
I know
you kind of,
what you mean. I feel like Edinburgh is just built from stones.
Yeah, for sure.
it's very gray, right?
Very
Yeah,
great.
but it's also it's very pretty in a way. It looks a
Yeah.
little bit like a fairy tale or something. And
Definitely.
London is completely different. London has everything, and I personally always feel that I haven't seen a city anywhere in the world where modern architecture blends so well into old architecture. Like
For sure.
where these both styles just merge together and just look gorgeous together.
Definitely. And it varies as well from like I guess place to place in London as well, because I'm from Croydon and there's a lot of history here as well, but then at the same time there's lots of new builds, so sometimes it can be quite distracting to the eye, but I think it works quite nicely.
I'm in the city.
Things sitting together.
I'm in the city, and of course we have a lot of new office buildings, towers, but also we have St. Paul's Cathedral, we have London Wall, and all this old buildings basically that tell the story of London.
Yeah,
the
sure.
real London, where London started.
Well.
Yeah. And is architecture something you're still drawn to today, or does it still influence your work? How's that kind of still sticking with you?
I wouldn't say it's something that directly influences me, but I think, I guess in terms of form and shapes and shadows, things like that, I feel like they still influence my work for sure. But as far as like actual architecture, maybe not so much.
Yeah, you've been a lot more kind of drawn to people in your work, right? And I guess we'll chat about this a little bit with Polly as well, but what kind of shifted in you being interested in this kind of identity project and shifting away from just the kind of still life and architecture focus?
I guess definitely like as I've lived my life, I guess it's been a journey of like getting to know myself and also the human condition. So in taking portraits of people, I get to learn about people and their stories. I get to capture people in like their purest essence. And yeah, I guess portraiture is my way of just being a human and learning more about other humans.
Yeah, and there's something about also, reading up a little bit about your work is you talk about your muses, right?
Do you want to show us some of your work?
Yeah, sure.
Love to
so
see.
I actually have a PDF portfolio. Some of my, I guess it's a mixture of my recent work and some of my older work. So this is an artist, Raptum, that I've worked with throughout the years. And this was for his single Belly. So I just took a lot of press photos for him, and then he also used some of the images for the cover for this song. This was like one of the first shoots I did when I moved back to London. So this was a few months after I got back, and it was a collaboration with Hypebeast and Bumble, and I ended up shooting the editorial for this collaboration, as well as like having them interview me and ask me about my process and having me engage with other artists to collaborate on this. Let's see.
Do you get a brief when you do this work? Do you get a brief, or do you come up with this idea and the scenery and the location?
So it varies. So sometimes you get sent a brief with everything kind of sorted as far as like the location already being scouted and models already like organized and things like that. But sometimes I end up pitching ideas as well, which can be quite cool because then you have more freedom. And then this example right here, this is a collaboration between myself and my friends. So my friend F.A. Styled this shoot. And then this was for our friend Thelonious Rager, who is a artist as well, a musician. So these were taken on film, actually. It was a really amazing day. So we ended up shooting for about a few hours and we got some food afterwards. So I really enjoy these collaborations with friends as well.
It looks difficult as well, like light-wise with these stripes or with this roof.
Yeah, for sure. But again, like I really enjoyed the shadows and the kind of area of light that we ended up having that the model could sit in. So
did you embrace the shadows that it was throwing, or did you try to block it off?
No, it was more so embracing it and also finding those weird lighting situations as well. which can always be fun. And I tend to shoot in natural light most of the time anyway, so it's just a case of doing with what is already there and making the most of it.
Really cool.
And then this is an editorial. So I shot this last summer actually, and then I recently started posting the images, and I'm going to go through how I retouch some of these images soon. And then this is from Polly, which is the project I mentioned from a few years ago. So again, I'm going to be talking about the technique I used as far as creating these. And this is from my trip to Senegal, and these were shot on film.
Wow.
And then this is Near the Light. He's also my friend, and I photographed her on Kodak film. So yeah, and then this is digital. So this was from many years ago. I shot Buddy, who's a rapper, for Guap Mag, which is a UK-based mag. Really amazing people involved in that as well. And then this is like a model test shoot. So I do quite a lot of these as well with modeling agencies.
And do you work mostly from home, or do you have a studio? Where's most of your work done?
I mostly shoot from, not shoot from home, but I mostly work from home.
Yeah.
As far as editing. I also have a space which I haven't renovated just yet, but I'm hoping to convert it into a studio. But currently it's just kind of been left alone for now.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. We have Caroline asking, what kind of camera do you usually use?
So at the moment, as far as film photography, I actually have my cameras here. So
yeah, that's a beautiful.
We love it.
Guy from the everybody, every guest has everything.
It's like picking everything. Yeah.
Yesterday we had someone picking her dog even.
I can't reach, but it's fine. Oh really?
Yeah.
So this is my Canon A1. Yeah, it's my favorite camera to use. I keep calling it the Canon A1, but it's the Canon A1. Yeah, it's one of my favorite cameras to use. It was my first film camera, and I actually wasn't meant to buy this, but I ended up walking to a local film camera store, and asked for the best recommendation as far as a cheap beginner camera, and this is what I got, and I still shoot with it to this day.
So that's the first one you had?
My Yashica T4, which is more of a point and shoot camera. So yeah, there's no film in here, which is good, but so it won't do anything. So it's really good for events and just taking those really nice quick snapshots. And I also have a Mamiya, but it's in the drawer and it's quite heavy, so we'll leave it in there.
So Sandrine is asking, what do you find in film that you can't find in digital apart from the post-processing? Are you able to hear?
Sorry, I think we're having some audio problems.
Can you hear us?
Turn these off.
Can you hear us okay? Can you hear us?
Okay, yeah? I can hear you now. Sorry about that.
Great, no problem. We're just picking up a couple questions, and Sandrine was asking, what do you find in film that you can't find in digital apart from the post-processing?
Apart from the post-processing, because that would have been my answer for that for sure, because I enjoy that there's less post-processing. But also in terms of film, I like that, I guess you're kind of restricted as far as how many photos you take for each roll. So for a 35mm roll, for example, so this one's quite a random one. So I can only take, for this one, I can only have 36 exposures. And I like that I have to be very decisive and careful with the photos I take to ensure that each photo counts. So I quite like that. And then with 120mm, you only really get 10 to 12 shots. So yeah, I quite like the limitation.
Yep. And Carolyn is asking, nice, do you prefer some special objectives for your camera as well?
Pardon?
Do you prefer some special objectives for your camera?
Special objectives as far as lenses and things like that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I really love shooting on 50mm because that's a really good portrait lens. So I tend to not interchange between that or any other lenses, especially for film. Yeah, so 50mm for sure, or if not, then 35mm.
Do you change them during a set?
Do I change my lenses?
Yeah.
I try not to too much. And And if it is mainly like a portrait to shoot, then I'll just use one lens usually.
And Rita is also asking, how do you go about collaborating with other creatives?
How do I go about collaborating? I guess it's social media. I think it's definitely a really amazing thing that we have, and it's been really great as far as collaborating in terms of like modeling or photography. And so that's how I meet a lot of my favorite artists and end up working with them. So social media for sure. And I guess it's a lot easier to reach out to someone and engage with someone via something like Instagram versus like a traditional thing such as email. But again, it is also good to email people to show that level of professionalism. So yeah, a bit of both is really good.
Yeah, and in terms of actual subject that you touch on, what kind of themes do you like to address beyond just the kind of technical part of this? But what do you usually like to, address in your subjects? What influences your work? I know you have a real process of, spending time with your work, and you describe it as spending time with your images, which is really poetic. So tell us a bit more about that.
So I feel like the themes I tend to explore the most in my work are like themes of identity for sure, and also like the human condition, mental health. Especially, I take a lot of self-portraits, and with these, I tend to kind of use them as an exploration of myself and trying to understand myself, or trying to like place myself in like new scenarios and role play and imagine myself with a new identity. So it's a lot of like inner questioning and trying to figure out my identity, as well as enabling others to do so as well through them having their photos taken. So definitely identity.
And is that in specific communities you're involved with, or where do you usually kind of go for inspiration?
With Polly, for example, it was inspired by my community. So I'm from the Fulani tribe. So a lot of it kind of tackles my, I guess, my love for the culture, but also my kind of questions that I have for it and things I don't agree with per se. So yeah, a lot of it is that kind of engaging with the community, but also trying to plant questions and make sure that we're all making sure we're all as progressive as possible.
Yeah, should we talk a bit more about Polly then, since you had it in your up there?
Sure.
And I think there's some questions as well coming up.
Yeah, we have some questions. Yeah, we have two that are quite similar. Carrie is asking, what film do you use? And Kelly is asking, do you develop the film in your own darkroom?
Okay, so the film I tend to use the most, I'd say, is Kodak Portra, so 400 or 160. I'm trying to shoot more black and white, so I've been shooting on Tri-X quite a lot as well. I have so much film in here that I just haven't shot with. Like I had intentions to do so. So that kind of answers the next question, which is, do I develop my own film? So I tend to take my film to a lab and get it developed there, and then I like to scan it myself. But I've recently ordered a developing kit. So it's for black and white film, and I hope to use it maybe in the next couple of days, but I don't have a scanner at home, which is the reason why I'm kind of delaying it at the moment, but it would be nice to do everything from home one day.
Have you ever done it before?
Yes, I've developed film in a lab, like an external lab. So just black and white film so far that I've done. And I've made a few mistakes from time to time, but sometimes it comes out okay, and that's always nice.
Have you also retouched before in the lab? Like the old school retouching before Photoshop, where you...
Oh, so like dodging and burning in the lab.
Yeah,
no, not yet, but I'd love to as well. Have you?
No, I haven't, but I mean, the internship that I did long time ago for a photographer, she showed me pictures of how she did it and what she did. So I found that quite impressive, like pre-Photoshop times, what people were capable of doing. It's just so...
yeah, it's so cool. Like all the tools are like basically inspired by the darkroom. It's so cool.
Yeah. Do you want to show us some more of your work and how you work in Photoshop?
Yeah, I'd love to. So just gonna close this. I guess what I'll do is I'll start off by showing you Polly. So
can you introduce the project a little bit as well? Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I'll tell you a bit more about the project and how it came about. So basically, Reform the Funk, which is a really amazing magazine, they asked me to create some work for an exhibition they were going to have. And they wanted me to have it kind of themed around identity and my personal identity as like a Black British Muslim. So upon having that kind of task and theme in mind, I decided to make Polly, which is basically about kind of how I feel about my community and how I feel about certain elements of it. And yeah, as this loads, I'll talk a bit more. So essentially, yeah, so Polly is about how I feel about Islam, how I feel about the Fulani tribe, and also just kind of different aspects that I have struggled with personally. So for example, I named this one Polyglot, which means, you know, someone that speaks multiple languages. And yeah, another thing is throughout this, there's like plastic use, because when plastic is burned, of course, toxic fumes are released. So I was kind of touching on the fact that if I was to let go of my identity, nothing but toxicity would come from this, as far as like, you know, being kind of cast away from the community or family. So it's quite a personal project in that sense. But this individual here is my brother, actually, and he kindly volunteered.
Amazing, I didn't know this. I've seen this photo everywhere. That's nice.
Oh, really? Yeah, I put hair extensions on him, and he didn't.
You did?
It was fine. Yeah. But what I'll do is
my brother
I'll show you, like,
let me do this.
Really?
How did he feel about it?
Bribe them.
Yeah, exactly. Bribe them. Nice.
He did it for the art. He was like, it's okay. I'll show you what it actually started off as, because this was all shot in my back garden, because again, it's very DIY as far as like the photography itself. And I was quite new to it at the time. So I put a backdrop like over my fence, and then I had my brother pose. And this was meant to be the final like kind of series and image, but then I found that I needed more to it. So I ended up photoshopping an entire background onto it, an entire like motif. So I started off by using an image of like sky, and I used masking to basically mask out my brother. Also brightening it a bit. And then I started playing around with the hue and saturation, which is where this kind of distinct pinkish color comes from. And then I added in some sand.
I also heard that your before photography, painting was kind of your thing as well, and you can see this in your work now in terms of how you bring up this kind of collaging and bringing different formats and tools together into your work.
Yeah, so I painted for like years and years. I studied art both for GCSEs and A-levels, which is like right before you go to university. So painting was always my thing, and then I started playing around with photography maybe in the second year of my A-levels. But masking kind of allows for that like painterly technique to happen. So again, just messing around with the colors, the hues, saturation, and then of course the moon there, which represents Islam. And then also I added in some dust, and this was way before I started shooting on film. So I guess I was trying to go down that route anyway, but it wasn't till like 2018, summer of 2018, when I started shooting on film.
But it looks like you have just changed the background, right? You haven't changed anything with the lighting in his face or anything like that.
Yeah, so I think the lighting, there was a separate Photoshop file where I edited out, like, where I made the lighting a bit better for his face. One thing I did do is I think this layer here actually is where I made the lighting pop a bit more, and I retouched his face a bit. And then I also, I think, yeah, I've added in some shadows around his cheekbones and things like that. And then also shadows around areas that would be darker if this was the scenario. So yeah, this was like the before and after for that. So yeah, I could show you another example.
What would you say is the most important when retouching a face?
When retouching a face, so say if it's a fashion editorial, I'd say just making sure like the skin is as even as possible, but at the same time keeping the texture there. That's my approach anyway. I like to keep it natural. So even you'll see later on when I retouch the the fashion editorial, like I do try to keep it as natural as possible. And I use a technique called frequency separation, which is really cool. So yeah, my laptop's quite slow, apologies.
That's all right.
Looks like you have huge files.
This is a very big file, actually, yeah.
How many layers do your files usually have?
Usually not this much, because again, this was when I was like first starting out, so I was just doing a lot, and just, yeah, there was a lot going on. This one I think might have more. Yeah. So again, this started off as just like her against the white backdrop, and then I laid in the sky, I put in the sand, and I also have a tree that's in front of her. I'll actually show you the beginning image. Yeah, a lot of masking.
Is it someone in your family as well at Ejatu?
So this is my friend Joanna, who stepped in as me in this series. So she kindly came over to my house one afternoon, and we just kind of photographed her in different scenarios. So this was the original. The theme again was plastic, so there was like a bin bag behind her. She was wearing plastic in her hair. But eventually I photoshopped that out and put in the background some trees. And then again, playing with masking and using that to make sure that, for example, the dust wasn't everywhere.
And where did you get the trees from? Did you shoot them before, or do you get them from stock libraries?
I used a stock library for this, yeah, at the time. So, but I feel like now if I was to do this again, I'd definitely shoot everything myself, or actually just create the set and have trees there and things like that. But again, it was just very like DIY, like, oh, I've been asked to do this project. How do I go about this? So yeah, that was quite fun. But I'd love to show you guys my retouching technique now.
Yes, I'd love to see that.
Okay, it would be good to close some things.
Yeah.
Do you currently shoot anything? Do you currently shoot anything? Do you live with your brother? Can you still take pictures of him?
Yeah, so I could actually, but I feel like now he wouldn't be as willing, because this was a few years ago, and now he's more like a grumpy teenager. But I'm sure maybe he would. So let's open this, and I'll show you a bit of frequency separation. So this was already edited in Lightroom, which I use to kind of get the color as it is, but I haven't touched the skin. So what I'm going to do is I actually have an action that I downloaded from, I don't know if you've heard of Jessica Corbasi, but she's an amazing photography YouTuber, and she gave this away for free. So she created an action for frequency separation, which is a technique I'll be using. So I press play on here, and it gives me all the layers I need for this, but it's all very compact and all together. Great, so now that that's loaded, there's two layers. We have the skin and we have the texture. So I'm only going to be working on the skin, and I use both the spot healing brush and the healing brush. And so I'm going to zoom in actually. So as I said before, like I do like to make sure I keep the texture there, but it's just a case of smoothing out some areas of the skin.
I have a couple of questions in the chat. Caroline is asking, do you have some tools for lightening?
For lightening?
Yeah.
As far as like lightening the entire
camera,
image?
I guess, yeah.
Oh, lighting.
Yeah, I think on your camera. Or maybe you can clarify, Caroline, what you mean. But that's how I understood it. Like if you have any lightning on your camera, or if any flashlight on your camera, or if you use any blocking lights or whatever.
Oh, I see. I do sometimes use an on-camera flash, but I'm still like trying to get used to that. But also the Yashica has a flash attached to it already. Yeah, mainly just natural light, and then maybe using a reflector to reflect the light on. So this is actually a digital shot, again shot with natural light. What I'm going to do actually is use the healing brush, and what's really amazing about it is, oh sorry, that's Alexa talking. Let's plug her up.
What did you do?
I don't know, I must have said Alexa or something, but she started talking. So yeah, what we do is we press Alt, and that helps us to sample an area of the skin that we'd like to copy or kind of transfer somewhere else. So for example, we have some slight darkness here from like eye bags. So I'm gonna sample this area here and start like placing it in these areas. And it's quite subtle, but does make quite a difference.
We have James asking, what is your best tool or technique to create a successful mask?
To create a successful mask, ooh. I do keep it quite basic. So, okay, for example, if I mainly use it for like just changing a certain area. So for example, if I wanted to make the eyeshadow pop really, really nicely, I'd create a layer with hue and saturation. And then what I like to do is I color it in. So it's black. Okay, so I'm gonna bring the saturation up. And then I like to paint in white anywhere that I'd like to actually be affected by the saturation. Okay, so I'm gonna go on here now. I need to swap that around. So yeah, so I like to paint it in. Of course, this is crazy. This is way too saturated. So I'm gonna bring the saturation down. But yeah, I like to keep it quite basic as far as when I do use masking. And just only really work with like the areas that I'd like to be really colorful and punchy. And actually, something, oh, yep, go for it.
Yeah, we have a couple comments from Sandrine as well, who says, frequency separation rocks when well done. We've all seen disasters. And what else is, we had a couple questions from here. Yeah, I always do as the amount of texture differs greatly. I also use surface blur. I think the result is more natural than Gaussian blur.
Yeah. I haven't actually tried that before, for sure. And also there's like dodging and burning as well that people like to use for retouching. But I'll go into it a bit more than the frequency separation.
Catherine is asking, do you create your own dodge and burn colors when working on the skin?
So because I don't use dodge and burn for this, no. I haven't tried that yet, but I'd love to as well. I don't know, do people find dodge and burn to be an easier technique or frequency separation?
Maybe you guys can answer in the chat.
Yeah, please.
How important would you say is makeup on a set like yours?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, how important is makeup on a set like yours?
I'd say it is quite important, especially if you're trying to create like a really cool artsy look. So even here, like the eyeshadow's already very bright, but I'm just going to enhance it slightly. It's always nice when the makeup's there and it's amazing to begin with, because then of course there's less retouching to do. Yeah, I find that it's really amazing working with makeup artists, for sure.
And you've also worked a lot in the fashion industry, so do you find that it changes as well, or how's that experience as well when in terms of makeup and set and all these things?
What I've found recently is that a lot of photographers have been like doing the makeup themselves, and like it's a lot more DIY at the moment, as far as people like learning multiple skills and like trying out everything, as far as set design, as far as taking the photos, as far as makeup. And even with this, for example, okay, well, not this photo, but the other one, I actually also did Joanna's hair as well. So yeah, I find that even like with editorial shoots that I've seen, sometimes there are really big teams, but sometimes it is a case of the photographer kind of trying out a bit of everything as well. So that's quite cool.
Would you say you have a different view on makeup because you see it from behind the lens than a makeup artist does?
I think I definitely appreciate like makeup artistry, especially like because I was a painter before. I do kind of see it more as an art form, so I can appreciate it kind of behind the lens and in front of it as well, because also I model as well, so I have a bit of both of the experiences.
Yeah, and Sandrine is saying dodge and burn works well when the textures differ greatly between areas, but it's very tedious. Count at least 1 hour or more for a full face.
Really? Well, okay, that is quite long, especially if there's lots of images.
you're like, I'm sticking to
it's
this.
good to try new techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's saying you sample your own colors for highlights and shadows and manually make the dodge and burn adjustments. Using the D and B tools can be too harsh. It's a similar idea to contouring with makeup.
Oh, I see. Okay, so if you're quite good at like makeup, which I'm not, then maybe it's a really good technique then. So just to show you a bit of a before and after.
Yeah, I love
just kind of smoothing it out. Sometimes it can be overdone, so like it does look a bit weird at the moment. So I try not to do it too much, but of course, just do what you can. And even in these areas where there is slightly more texture to the skin, it is still possible to kind of smooth it out, but at the same time, keep that texture there.
So you use everything through that action?
Yeah, exactly. So the action helps to create the texture layer and the skin layer. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to do all of this, which is like lots of layers and changing things and then Gaussian blur. Yeah, there's a lot of it.
Do you feel you have to retouch more when you photograph people than if you were to photograph architecture or landscape?
I definitely find, like, even when it comes to shoots that aren't necessarily like a fashion shoot, I don't really retouch the skin like that, especially if I'm shooting on film. Like, I'll just kind of change the negative a bit and edit it slightly, maybe change the color slightly as well, but I'll try to keep it as natural as possible. But because this was an editorial, like, I did want to showcase some sort of retouching.
I always found it harder to photograph people because of, like, you know, the eyebrows throw the shade below, the nose throws the shade to the left or to the right. There are just so many things in a face that throw shades that you don't want. And when you photograph landscape or architecture, it's just not like it. Or it's not as bad the impact on the picture if there is a shade on a building or something as it is when it's in the face.
That's true. So it's always important, I guess, to just like optimize everything like whilst you're there, like there at the shoot.
Yeah.
To make sure it's as easy as possible. I haven't really done much here, but you can kind of see on the forehead area where it's been reduced slightly with lumpiness. Actually, I'd love to show you how I edit my film negatives as well, because I have said it's like quite minimal what I do for those. So maybe I could show you that. But just to show you the very minimal job I just did there, yeah, I managed to only really edit those areas, but still it makes a difference. So I'm gonna close that for now, because as you can hear, my machine's very loud at the moment. Okay.
Overheating.
It's overheating for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a plane in Gatwick at the moment.
Nicer geography, Stephanie. Croydon, Gatwick. You're on.
Honestly, Croydon, I've never been to Croydon other than at the train station on my way to Gatwick Airport.
Everyone says this, like, everyone just uses us as like a way of getting to Gatwick. It's not nice, but it's okay.
Or you can stop off at Bucks Park. I always do.
Thank you.
See, I can visit. We have right?
But at least that's how you know where Croydon is, because there are other areas I don't even know where they are because I've never even passed through them. So at least people know where Croydon is.
Yeah, Google Croydon, guys. There's a lot to offer here. So much to offer. So this is one of the images shot on film. So this is my friend Abu and his dog Rex. So I shot him on the beach in Sali in Senegal. Nice. So this was shot on film, of course. I'll just take off all these layers. I guess I kind of went crazy with the layers for this one, but it isn't too different to the original. Just go all the way to the original. Okay, this is the original.
Who in the chat would love to be on that beach right now?
I know. Make a stream.
I know.
You can Photoshop us all in that beach.
Exactly.
You know what? I might just do that. It's such a beautiful place, honestly.
The whole chat all on that beach.
With him as well, or?
Everyone.
Everyone together. See, everyone in the chat is saying me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so this was shot on Kodak Portra. I think it was 160. I don't remember which one it was shot on. But essentially, I wanted to make it even more of a warm image. So I'll just show you all the different layers. So I mess around with levels quite a lot as far as reducing the highlights and also reducing the shadows. And then exposure is quite a good one because it gives it this like faded film look. Even though it's already shot on film, I like to kind of make it even more of a filmic photo. I mess with levels a bit more. And then I bring in this like really nice peachy tint to the image. But what I do is I put this onto soft light, which allows for it to not have too much of an impact. And of course, messing around with opacity and fill. And then I put in even more of a kind of red orangey tone. And then I bring down the hue and saturation. And then that's how we end up with this. Of course, some people might prefer the before, but I like this more faded look. And actually, if I zoom in, sorry for the nudity, I guess, but there's a lot of like film scratches there, and a lot of the like chemicals from the developer is still like on the negative, so you can kind of see those are still there. And I like to keep in these elements in my photos as well, just to kind of show it was shot on film, and also because it gives it this very timeless look.
Yeah, you can see it on the person, but you can't see it on the dog or the sand, which is
I
interesting.
think, oh, there's a light leak over here. Well, no, that's not a light leak, that's some dust. Then a bit over here. Oh yeah, if we zoom into the dog,
yeah, then
you can see a little bit. Yeah, there's some dust there.
True.
Yeah, so Rex really loved the camera. He's passed away, unfortunately, just lost the dog. But yeah, but he really loved being photographed.
How old was he?
I'm not sure. I think he was around 5. Sure. I think it was an accident. No. I'm gonna bring this into Photoshop as well because it hasn't been edited.
And you're shooting a lot in Senegal, right, as well? Is that somewhere where you spend a lot of time and inspires you? I mean, obviously right now you won't be, no one is able to go, but in terms of, your kind of inspiration coming from there and a lot of your work being shot there as well. Yeah, so I spent about 3 weeks there. So this was December 2018. And it was an amazing trip as far as like the people I went with, the people I met. Yeah, and just, it was like the first time I'd taken like 120mm film with me on a holiday as well. I wouldn't really call it a holiday though. It was more like, it's like self-searching, soul-searching, and also just being in a country that's similar to my like country of origin as well, which is Guinea and Sierra Leone. So I liked that familiarity as far as the countries being quite similar. Yeah, and I love the sand, so it's always nice. And again, Polly has a lot of sand in it.
How do you choose your holiday destinations usually? Is it around where your origins are, or is it just in general where a beach is?
It must be where beaches are, because my last holiday was in Barcelona and I spent a lot of the time on the beach. Yeah, beaches for sure. Just like hot places, really hot countries, with like a variety of different people and variety of experiences for sure. I do want to travel a lot more once this is all over. I really hope the prices aren't crazy. Actually, before
it needs to be warm.
I'm just gonna duplicate this. Yeah, it has to be warm. To be honest, it isn't too bad here in London, but I wouldn't know because I haven't been outside in a while. So,
but 2 weeks ago we had like 24 degrees over the weekend.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on my balcony. It was great.
Yeah, I still have a really nice tan from a few weeks ago as well. But again, we have some more like chemicals that have been left on the negative. I didn't develop this one, so the lab did this. But I should have wiped it down with my gloves. I have special gloves for like placing the film on the scanner and handling the film. But what I like to do again is just kind of get rid of any really prevalent mess on the negative.
So is that the disadvantage of using film, or do you enjoy just the other positive aspects that come with film?
It's a pro and con. I guess if I had the lab develop and scan everything, then I wouldn't have this problem. Like certain labs make sure that that isn't an issue. But the lab I took this to, they kind of just handled it in this way. So it isn't so much of an issue. And actually, before I get really into that, I'm just going to show you how I would go about like coloring this. Oh. So again, the levels. I like to bring the highlights down, and also the shadows. And then I'll pick a solid color. So usually maybe somewhere along those lines. And then again, I'll apply the soft light. So yeah, that's far too yellowy. I'm gonna bring down the opacity slightly, and then maybe go down and make it a bit more of a, yeah, that kind of color. So again, it adds that sort of warmth to the image. Some people might prefer it like this, of course. And again, I like to do this sort of thing. So before I really got into Photoshop, I used to just apply all of these different settings to the same layer, which is insane because if you make a mistake or if you don't really like something anymore, you'd have to go into the history and like try your best to get to the point that you'd like to get to. So the really amazing thing about having these layers instead is that you can turn them on and off, and then also you can adjust the opacity, you can adjust these different effects as well. So that was quite a good thing that I learnt.
We have a couple of nice comments about your work. Jonathan is saying nice retro. And Sandrine is saying, love the grading, by the way. Have you tried rinsing with Rinse Aid? That's what I would do. This amount of chemical stain is insane.
With Rinse Aid? Okay, I'm gonna write that down. Thank you.
Yeah, like actually taking notes. Yeah.
That's what the community is there for.
I love this.
Yeah, because I know that at the end of like developing, you're meant to basically wash the film for about 15 minutes. So you put it like in a bath, I guess, of running water, and it just kind of washes it for you. But I don't think this individual did that. So the chemicals weren't rinsed off properly. But yeah, I just kind of do this as far as editing film, and of course, like getting rid of any like really prevalent stains, and then that's it really, as far as editing my film photos. So it's very different to my digital photos.
And do you know the people you have taken pictures of, or did you just randomly meet them on holiday?
So Abu, I met him whilst I was on holiday, but if I ever go there again, of course, like I'm gonna be photographing him again and hanging out with him again. So sometimes I do tend to like reach out to people beforehand. So for example, like I went to Amsterdam back in, I think it was 28. Like all the dates are so mixed up now, aren't they? Everything's just all over the place. But I think it was last year I went to Amsterdam, and beforehand, one of my online friends introduced me to one of her online friends, and she kind of said, hey, whilst you're out there, you should meet up with her. And now she's one of my really cool friends as well, and she's a photographer as well. So, oh, what's going on here? Actually, we don't have much time left. So actually, I would like to show you what a contact sheet kind of looks like if someone hasn't seen one before. Because one thing about film that's really amazing is when you're presenting your image, you can actually present it as a contact sheet, or as like, so you can present it in this kind of way with the borders around your image, which some people really love doing. And it tells you the film that was used. So yep, it's actually Kodak Portra 160. And this is all one roll of film, which is really cool. So yeah, that's another thing that's really amazing about film, just being able to see all your images in this very cool way.
How are you finding your projects picking up at the moment? Is it something, what do you have on? What's coming up for 2020? Is there anything you can share? Or how are you going to be planning around this time where you can't travel?
it's quite tricky at the moment. Like a lot of my gigs were cancelled, even like extra work that I do, so working in films, all cancelled. So yeah, I guess I'm trying to navigate the online world a bit more. So I have a YouTube channel, which I'm trying to put more effort into now. So that's kind of another like online thing that I can do. I've also been teaching maths online to my students because I teach maths as well as something that I do. So everything's online.
From architecture to maths. This is amazing. You're just pulling from all sides. But yeah, I know about your YouTube channel as well. You have this kind of video format as well that you're dabbling in and testing out, which is great.
Yeah, so YouTube's really amazing. I've been using Premiere Pro actually for my editing. I might actually open that up for you guys if my laptop permits me to. But what I like to do, yeah, slightly. I like to go between Photoshop and Premiere Pro actually. So if I want to like create like some writing, I'll go into Photoshop and like write out whatever I need to, and then just move the PSD file into Premiere Pro. And that basically allows me to make any changes to the writing and have it just like immediately update on Premiere Pro, which is quite cool. And also in terms of creating like animations, so these are very basic animations, but I like to kind of experiment in Photoshop first and then move all my files over. Oh, so let's see if it will.
This kind of collaging format works really well with video and Premiere Pro, and you bring that in as well in such an amazing way.
Thank you.
How long does it usually take you when you photograph these people on the beach? Is it like a proper shooting, so you set 1 hour or something like that, or is it more like hanging out with friends and you just take the pictures in the go or in the moment?
I think it's the latter actually. Yeah, so just kind of being in the moment, having my camera on me, and just engaging with people and photographing them. Very candid indeed.
Would you say that's the biggest difference between shooting with friends or acquaintances and professional models when you do your fashion photo shoots?
Definitely. Obviously, friends can sometimes be a bit shy, or like they don't really want to be photographed, or they have to like warm up to it a bit more. Whereas models, of course, kind of are there to work their stuff. So can be quite different, but I do really enjoy photographing friends and having kind of that moment as far as walking around with them, photographing them, maybe them photographing me, and it being like a back and forth. So that's always quite nice. So this is what my Premiere Pro kind of looks like. So this was for a, I'll just mute the audio actually. This was for a recent video I did, which was the behind the scenes of the fashion editorial I did. There are so many layers here, but luckily I've hidden some of them, so maybe I'll be able to play it.
Go for it.
Maybe not.
Nope.
Maybe not, but I'll kind of show you what I've done as far as layers. So for example, I wanted Dream Theory to be written down, which was the name of the editorial. So I made that in Photoshop. Wish I could show you, but it's fine. I might actually show you the Photoshop file. Actually, it's fine. No worries. Yeah,
Kirsty's also asking if you use Lightroom, or are you mostly working just on Photoshop?
I do use Lightroom sometimes because it does have quite a lot of amazing capabilities. Sometimes it's a case of transferring the file from Lightroom onto Photoshop, like right afterwards, and just going back and forth in that way. So yeah, I do use Lightroom sometimes. It is actually open over here. Well, not open, but yeah. What I'll do is I'll close Premiere Pro. That's quite sad. I wanted to show you my process. But essentially what I wanted to kind of point out is that it's a lot of back and forthing between Photoshop and Premiere Pro. Yeah. Oh,
you were pushing it to the limit on your laptop.
I really am. I really hope it survives this.
How long did it take you to do that video?
Oh. That video,
sensitive.
Gosh, very sensitive topic there. That video took me, okay, I'm gonna say how many hours it took, because if I say days, it's gonna sound crazy. I'd say it took me a total of 12 hours, and this is a 2-minute video, around 2 minutes, 30 seconds. But I think it's because I really wanted to try out some new things, so a lot of it was just me playing around. and experimenting. But hopefully next time it won't take so long. So.
No, I definitely recommend everyone to have a look, because I saw it and it's just, great and worth the effort. So yeah,
Yes.
is it on your YouTube channel or
yes, it is.
When do you kind of, yeah, okay, great.
So it's on my YouTube channel. So it's just my name, and yeah, Ejatu Shaw. So I tend to upload quite a lot of like film photography content on there, as well as digital stuff, and also tutorials that I like film on YouTube and on Photoshop, things like that.
Do you also take pictures with your mobile a lot, or are you completely against it and you're all for camera?
Gosh. I'm not like completely against it, because that's how I started. I started on my iPhone 4. So I wouldn't say I'm against it. Sometimes I do take photos on my phone and edit them on like a phone app, but I'm definitely a camera person now, and more so film photography at the moment. Definitely.
I know from a lot of photographers as well that they use their phone just to find a set, and they take test pictures with the phone, so they understand how the lighting is, and then go back and grab all the equipment they need with the professional camera to go out.
Yeah, exactly. It's like essentially you're creating like a mood board, but with your own images, which is quite cool. And at least like your phone's always on you, so you're just able to take those photos really easily. Like I used to take photos of like different like areas that I really liked and that I thought I'd maybe come back to for an editorial or things like that. So yeah, it's quite important to have something to record moments or places that you want to remember.
I mean, I always use the Lightroom app on iPhone and because you can take raw pictures.
As well. Yeah,
I take like that's why
it's really bad. But I do that.
My storage is just not existing anymore. It's just,
oh no.
Yeah, but it's just so brilliant. I feel like, especially for landscape and stuff, because I don't feel that I really need Photoshop anymore. If you take holiday pictures and it's all landscape, then Lightroom is just enough, for hobby purposes. Whereas Photoshop, I feel it's very into detail, and I've used it obviously for a long, long time. But now that you have Lightroom on the phone, there are just so many pictures I never even open on the computer anymore.
Wow. I've never used it on the phone before, but I feel like if I did have it on there, I'd maybe overdo it as well. So I try to like keep it separate.
It's so addictive. I'm literally sitting all plane journey long, like on my flight. I'm just retouching pictures in Lightroom on the phone all the time. Yeah.
And then you land and you have this whole portfolio of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Now let's post it.
I miss that now. We don't have the traveling, so you have all these, this content that's just sitting there. You're waiting to edit.
Yeah. Actually, the picture that is printed on canvas behind there, this was taken in Lightroom app. I took that when I was in the Seychelles. And the quality is good enough. Yeah, nice. Because it's raw format, so you can really scale it up as big as this or even bigger. Yeah.
Wow.
And
phones can do so much these days.
Palm tree in between. But yeah, it does really impressive good quality. Like, yeah.
Sandrine is saying my phone would be useless without Capture Lightroom Mobile. So I'm glad we're not the only ones who are relying on this to survive.
I'm about to download it myself, honestly.
There you go.
That's right. And even if you load from your camera your pictures into Lightroom, then they will sync automatically to your phone. So you can still take pictures with your camera and edit them on your phone as well, which is pretty cool as well. So.
And of course, it's a quick way to like test out a quick editing technique that you might want to try out later on when you get home.
Yeah,
so it's quite good.
Because everything in Lightroom, you can just say edit in Photoshop later on. And
yeah, exactly.
Final question from the chat from Jonathan, who says, have you ever tried or worked with a large format camera? And if so, what did you think?
So that's something I still haven't tried, but I really would love to. I'd like to try wet plate photography as well. Yeah, I haven't tried it yet. I'd love to, but I think I've just kind of chickened out a bit as far as trying it. But I'd love to, yeah, for sure.
You have plenty to test out after this. Now we're just going to check on you and make sure you have Lightroom on your phone. You're testing all these things out.
But sort out your
overheating laptop.
But I have to say, when I was on Safari, I wished I would have had a lens. I mean, Lightroom helped a little bit because of the raw format, so you can just zoom in to actually see the animal, but it's still not as good as if you would have a proper camera with a proper lens, because the animals are just so far away. But for everything else, it's working fine for me, at least. And yeah, we have pretty much come up to time, haven't we? Time just
we have already.
God. Ejatu, it was such a pleasure to see your work and your inspiration, and it's just great. And yeah, thank you, community, for tuning in. Emma and I are here every day, Monday to Friday, from noon to 1 p.m. UK time. And do you have any last words for our community, Ejatu?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for your amazing questions. It's been really amazing. Thank you. You guys have been really supportive.
Thanks for being with us, and thank you, Emma, of course, for co-hosting with me.
Thanks, everyone.
We see you back tomorrow at noon.
See you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.